Good morning. I'm Brian Steen, Burke County Manager. Appreciate you being able to come out and cover our press conference this morning. We'll start off with Chairman Britton from Burke County.
Good morning. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for being here. Yesterday, Burke County filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court in Western District, Asheville, against the manufacturers and distributors of prescribed opioid pain relievers. The lawsuit will send a powerful message that the citizens of Burke County will not tolerate the actions and failures of the manufacturers and distributors of these addictive opioid narcotic drugs. We've given you a copy, a very detailed copy, of this complaint that spells out clearly the facts and legal reasons why the recovery of damages and abatement of the problem for our citizens is of paramount importance. In 2016, there were some 64,000 deaths in our country from drug overdoses, and approximately 3/4 of those deaths were directly related to opioid abuse. In addition, opioid abuse has created tremendous financial cost and strains to all counties in law enforcement, emergency medical services, social services, and increased court costs. In Burke County, in foster care alone, that is much directed to opioid overdose and abuse, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars that had not been planned to be spent for foster care because of the dramatic increase in the care that we have undertaken. Our law enforcement, of course, deals with more and more crimes that are related to drug abuse. The impact is also tremendous in other social service areas. When moms and dads are not able to take care of their families, it leaves that for us to help take care of. Emergency management, again, extra calls for those folks to deal with. So we're pleased that we've been able to move forward with this. We believe it's the best thing for Burke County. The lawsuit will be carried out by a firm that we've selected. We'll hear from that firm in just a few minutes, and it'll be carried out on a contingent basis so that the county will not be expected to fund this lawsuit. We're glad to have with us this morning, representing Burke County and the number of the departments that are primarily affected, our Sheriff, Steve Wisnett. Our DSS Director, Durain Hernandez, is sick today, but DSS will be represented by Kathy Craig. Our 911 Center Director is present, Brock Hall. Our EMS Director, Craig Curry, is present. And then our Health Department Director, Rebecca McLeod, is also present. And they'll be available for questions that you might have as the press conference continues. This time I want to recognize our Vice Chairman, Johnny Carswell, for some remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Jeff said, I'm Johnny Carswell, Vice Chairman of the Burke County Board of Commissioners, and I'd like to say today that we feel very confident that we've hired some of the best law firms in the United States of America to represent us here. I think we've done well by the citizens of Burke County to hire this firm. You're going to be introduced to Ed Powell shortly, and we're very pleased to know that Ed and his firm will be representing us. We're very pleased to understand that Judge Poston from the Ohio District Court has already met with our law firm, and we're on the front table with Judge Poston right now. We're very pleased with that, and I'm going to let Ed tell you a little bit more about what's happening in the Ohio District Court right now. We also know that we've acted well on behalf of the citizens of Burke County. We're very pleased at the rate that we've been offered with this law firm. The good thing about it is it's not going to cost the taxpayers of this citizen one penny of tax money. That this firm's working on a contingency fee, and we're very happy about that. So at this time, I would like to introduce Ed Powell. Ed?
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Chairman, County Manager, and department heads. I'm Ed Powell. I'm an attorney from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it's indeed an honor to represent Burke County in this most important litigation. The opioid crisis has taken hold in America as bad as any situation this country has ever faced. And to be specific about Burke County, we filed this 166-page lawsuit yesterday in the United States District Court up in Asheville. And as a part of that, on page 21, you can go back and refer to it and get the specifics, but there's specific information in there about the opioid epidemic in Burke County. For the 9-year period from 1999 through 2007, Burke County experienced 105 opioid-related deaths for an average of 11.7 deaths per year. In the following 9-year period from 2008 till 2016, opioid-related deaths increased to 174 deaths for an average of 19.3 deaths per year. The Centers of Disease Control estimate that Burke County approximately 151 opioid prescriptions were dispensed per 100 people in 2016. That's 151 prescriptions per 100 people in 2016 in this county. This was more than double the national average for 2016 of 66.5. In the years leading up to 2016, Burke County's opioid prescription rate remained particularly high, with 154.9 prescriptions dispensed per 100 people in 2015. It is indeed a crisis, and it's indeed time to do something about it. And Burke County has recognized this crisis and has decided to do something about it. I'm privileged to be associated with 6 law firms from around the country that represent the best of the best. The first firm I'll mention will be Barron and Budd out of Dallas, Texas, one of the very largest plaintiffs' law firms in mass tort litigation in the country. They have tried literally hundreds of cases around the country in mass tort type litigation. We have another firm in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, McHugh Fuller, which has been involved in mass tort for many, many years. We have another firm, that firm in Mississippi is McHugh Fuller. Then we go over to Pensacola, Florida, with the Levin Papantonio firm, another very large mass tort firm. Then we go up to West Virginia, where the ground zero of the opioid epidemic is, and we have 3 firms up there. That would be Hill Peterson firm in Charleston, the Powell Magistro firm in Charleston, and the Green Ketchum and Farrell firm in Huntington, West Virginia. The lead counsel of the opioid litigation is now Paul Farrell from Huntington, West Virginia, one of our attorneys, and he is the first attorney in the country to file litigation against the distributors. There had been litigation pending against the manufacturers for a number of years, but he filed the first cases against the distributors and the manufacturers. And if you'll notice in this 166-page complaint that we have sued the 3 major distributors, that being AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson Corporation. Those 3 distributors distributed last year approximately 85% of all opioid drugs in the United States. And during that time, they had revenues of $485 billion. That's B-boy, $billion in revenues of drugs they distributed. And during the last few years, they have been fined by the court, a couple of these distributors, for $150 million, and yet they contend that they've done no wrong. But what I would say is that a $150 million fine to a firm that's making $100+ billion a year in revenues is like paying a traffic ticket off for 62 and a 55. That's the kind of punishment, if you will, that these firms that have created these problems have inflicted on this country with little or no repercussions if you will. What has happened is that there's been about 300 lawsuits filed in the United States in opioid. They have consolidated all these cases in front of one judge. All the opioid cases in the United States and in the last few weeks have been consolidated in front of one judge in Cleveland, Ohio, Judge Polster, P-O-L-S-T-E-R. And Judge Polster held a preliminary meeting with the attorneys for the plaintiffs and defendants, the attorneys for the manufacturers and the distributors, as well as all plaintiffs' attorneys, in his courtroom there in Cleveland a few weeks ago. But most important, yesterday, he held the first settlement discussions, which is unprecedented, for a case of this magnitude involving hundreds of billions of dollars nationwide. To have cases filed and have put on a fast track like this, we think is critically important. We think it's critically important that counties like Burke have elected to come to bring these lawsuits, because the timing is everything in a lawsuit like this. And the situation is, if you do not have counsel at the table representing you, then you're for sure left behind. If you don't participate in the case, then you are not going to get recovery. And as the chairman said, and the vice chairman, Burke County alone has suffered millions of dollars a year in lost in additional costs and lost revenues they could use for something else, in the increased costs in EMS, increased costs in law enforcement, increased costs in courts, increased costs in social services, and like the chairman said, the foster families and all the children and people who died from opioid overdoses. We have a real crisis here, and something has to be done about it, and it's no longer time to sit on the sidelines and watch and wait. And in fact, Judge Polster, in his first meeting with the attorneys about 3 weeks ago, said that we're going to grasp this thing and do something about this crisis. I'm not going to allow you attorneys to spend a lot of time with legal niceties and all kinds of discovery and spinning tales and things like that. What we're going to do is we're going to get to the heart of the issue, and we're going to try to negotiate and settle this case, these cases. And if you don't, I personally am going to try the first case in my court in Cleveland, Ohio, in January of next year. So that is, once again, unprecedented in a case of this magnitude. These cases generally go on for years, and with appeals and things like that, it takes an incredible amount of time to get funds back in the hands of the rightful people who are trying to recover for the damages that we have. And what we have here is a situation that is moving along in rapid pace, and we want to be at the forefront. One thing that I think that we bring to the table more than anything else is that in the multi-district litigation, the court appoints and lets the attorneys appoint among themselves who is going to be on the executive committee to decide how the settlement negotiations go, how the time frame works, what's going to be discussed, how much is going to be discussed, all that kind of thing. Paul Farrell with the Green Ketchum Farrell firm in Huntington, West Virginia, who is one of the firms that signed this complaint, and he is the lead plaintiff's attorney in the multi-district litigation that Judge Polster has. He is one of the people that meet privately with him, like they did yesterday, to discuss how this is going to go, how it's going to be formulated, and how I want it to be handled. And that is just critically important, we feel. And we'll be glad to take questions. I know you have a lot of questions about this, and we'll be glad to answer them. I will, as well as the members of the county commission and the department heads, county manager, county attorney. We have a very good group of people here today who have a lot of knowledge about what's going on and why they did what they did yesterday.
Can you show me the lawsuit one more time?
Yes, sir. This is the 166-page lawsuit that the county filed yesterday in the district court in Asheville.
And is it against the manufacturers and distributors?
Against the manufacturers and distributors. There's some 20-some defendants in this case. Burke County versus Amerisource Bergen Drug Corporation, that's a distributor. Cardinal Health, that's a distributor. McKesson Corporation, that's a distributor. Purdue Pharma LP, Purdue Pharma Inc., Purdue Frederick Company are the companies that make oxycodone and OxyContin. And of course, that's one of the primary drugs that we're talking about here. What happened was, years ago, the oxycodone and OxyContin were spun, the tale was spun by the drug manufacturers that these were safe drugs to take on a regular basis, that you could take these drugs for your arthritis problems and other kinds of pains that you have on a continuing basis. Well, that's how the addiction has started. And they knew better, and they should have known better through adequate medical research on this, because these drugs are highly addictive. Basically, oxycodone is a painkiller, and OxyContin is a 12-hour release of oxycodone. So you get a high for 12 hours, so to speak. And the Congress set up back in 1970 the Controlled Substances Act. And the Controlled Substances Act said we're going to regulate how narcotic drugs are legally distributed to doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies. And they said we're going to have a method on that. We're not going to let the drug manufacturers do the distributing. We're going to have licensed distributors who will qualify before they set up the Drug Enforcement Administration, which you've all heard of, the DEA. And the DEA was to monitor this activity by the distributors. What we've seen in these recent years is these three companies have come in and dominated the scene of sales. And I've got a table here that shows that the revenues for the distributors far exceeds that of the manufacturers, which tells you a little something about the markup, doesn't it? So what they're supposed to do is report abnormal requests for increased prescriptions to ARCOS, A-R-C-O-S as an acronym for an abbreviation, where DEA is supposed to be getting this information on a regular basis from the drug distributors. They have not been doing it, and if they have, they've been doing it wrongly. If any of you saw the 2 60 Minutes programs that were broadcast, but one back in October and the other in December, or it might have been in January. It's been in the last few weeks. The most recent one is a very detailed explanation of what's happening in this country in regard to the opioid epidemic. Be glad to take questions now from any of you.
I'd like to get the DSS person.
All right.
And your name?
My name is Kathy Craig. I'm the Services Program Administrator for Burke County Department of Social
What are you
Services.
seeing insofar as effects of this? They were talking about foster care. There's a lot of people that are having to deal with that.
Correct. In our foster care numbers, in 2016, we had, January of 2016, we had 160 children in foster care. January 2017, we had 216 children in foster care. And as of yesterday, January 31st, 2018, we have 245 children in foster care.
And you can attribute this to the opioid epidemic?
Many of those children have entered due to children themselves testing positive for being exposed to opioids. So we drug screen children sometimes when we're involved with their families and they're testing positive, or their parents testing positive, as well as how that opioid abuse affects the care of the children.
Are there other aspects? Are you seeing people out of work and needing DSS help and things like that because they've become addicted?
We are looking into, gathering that type of data. In Children's Services, we started tracking it a little sooner than some of the economic programs. So we are still working on gathering that data.
So there are more children than ever that are testing positive for this by being around it.
Absolutely, yes.
Are they ingesting it, or are they just? How is it getting into their system?
Well, and we are not certain, very honestly. We have tried to get as much training as we have been able to. We've, looked at studies. We have people on the state level who are trying to gather that information and do some research and assess exactly how the children are testing positive. We know that children, when they are born, if their mothers have used opiates during pregnancy, that they can test positive at birth.
So we're getting newborns testing positive with some older kids too.
Yes. The trend does seem to be that it is the younger children. In 2017, Burke County DSS drug screened 163 children. 99 of those children were 3 years and younger. 96 of the 163 that were tested positive for a substance, many including opioids. Anybody else have any questions?
If there's no other questions, I want to let you know that the full complaint will be posted on the Burke County website. If anybody wants to review that and see what is alleged in our complaint as far as the types of behavior that occurred, what the manufacturers were doing, and supposedly misleading people about the nature of the drugs, they're causing any kind of harm, and then going back, I guess they even were able to go back through sales to see who was selling and who wasn't selling and reach out to those who weren't hitting the mark, and I guess trying to encourage them to issue more opioid prescriptions. And then they misrepresented the ability for these drugs to be addictive, and it's just, when you read through that, and I think there's also portions of that they are accusing them of a RICO.
Yes.
I mean, this almost sounds
Racketeering.
like the mafia on steroids. It's just incredible if you were able to read the full complaint, what is alleged that occurred over and over and over again, and you see the stonewalling of DEA, the impact in Congress of passing a resolution. I think it was just, there was no opposition, and it took the teeth out of DEA. And some of the people that were in the 60 Minutes broadcast are actually going to be expert witnesses for this law firm that the county has employed as part of their team. So we appreciate your coming and allowing us to get our word out. Again, this will be on our website for anybody that's interested, and we hope to see some kind of benefit to the county to help us begin to heal as soon as possible.
So the entire lawsuit's on?
Yes, sir. Thank you again.
One other thing that, some of you may not have seen it, it might have gone to someone else in your office, but all the media received a copy of this complaint by PDF yesterday, late yesterday afternoon. So somewhere in your newsroom, you should have a copy available for the